Chapter 11. Will the pain ever stop? Living with chronic pain is tiring. It dominates your day from the moment you wake up and can even keep you from sleeping. I discovered that escaping it was nearly impossible. No matter what I did, the pain seemed as constant as my own bones. The injections offered little comfort. When they did work, they teased me with a glimpse of a pain-free life, only for that relief to vanish. Sometimes the relief lasted a few weeks, other times it disappeared within days. The ones that didn't work plunged me deeper into despair. I took pills to ease the pain. At times they dulled the pain or just knocked me out for many hours. I followed my medication routine strictly, feeling like I had no other choice. Gradually, taking my medication became more crucial than eating or sleeping. I would start my day hoping the meds would take effect quickly. But the pain never fully went away, and as each day progressed, it came roaring back, making me count down to my next dose. Sometimes the pain was so bad I'd take my meds early, which only made me need the next dose sooner. Eventually, I depended on more pills than I should have, leaving me feeling detached from reality. The heavy medication clouded my mind, causing great anxiety. I worried about running out of pills or losing access to them. This fear eventually became a reason not to leave my house. Pain relief became both a comfort and a prison. I didn't realize that depression had slowly taken hold of me. It was such a gradual descent that I failed to see how my mood and outlook had shifted. By the time the darkness had fully enveloped my life, I was only focused on getting by, not on my feelings. That's why, when Susie accidentally left me feeling cold, my outburst was a release of all the desperation and helplessness I felt. However, after that moment, I felt less angry about my situation, as if vocalizing my frustrations had eased some pressure. Susie's response showed her unwavering support and loyalty. I felt guilty for yelling but relieved for having opened up, even if I didn't further explore those feelings. In her way, Susie showed that her support was limitless. Lashing out at my dear wife, I then sank into a sullen mood. My mind was tormented, my body felt shattered, and we were drowning in financial troubles. Losing my salary the moment I went on sick leave took a toll, exhausting our savings to keep us afloat. Now it was on Susie with her upstairs salon to maintain our home and put food on the table. My inability to even do basic chores crushed me. From washing dishes to changing light bulbs, each attempt to contribute ended in sheer pain. As time passed, viewing myself only as a burden, dark thoughts of a permanent escape began to surface. In the winter of 2009, 3 years post-accident, the lake froze solid. Confined indoors, the biting cold seeped into my being. No layers or heating offered relief. In that low, drugged state, hope deserted me. Then Susie shared how she'd seen kids skimming stones on the icy lake. We reasoned the ice out deep wouldn't hold, and suddenly I envisioned testing that myself. For a moment, that vision consumed me, seeing myself march towards the inevitable fall through the ice at a determined pace, indifferent to pain or the outdoor chill. In my mind, just yards offshore, the ice would splinter, swallowing me whole. Rather than alarm, this grim prospect sparked a series of suicidal impulses. Driving to endless medical appointments, I several times nearly veered into a tree, my hand tensing on the wheel, foot flirting with the accelerator, hoping for the resolve to end it swiftly. It was a dark, desperate period. I wished to shield Susie from witnessing my downfall, yet her presence alone pulled me back every time I teetered on the edge of self-destruction. I kept my battles silent, yet I've since pondered if she sensed my plight. Because when I saw no exit, my wife, in essence, illuminated a path forward. "Brandon, we need more milk. Could you grab some?" "What?" I mumbled, wallowing in my own gloom at the kitchen table. I had been marinating in silence all morning, a skill I had mastered. Susie stood by the refrigerator with our teas ready, waving an almost empty milk carton at me. "I can't possibly go outside," I protested, genuinely shocked she'd even suggest it. Going outside felt as absurd as being asked to take a trip to the moon, especially since I hadn't stepped out in forever. Susie, look at me. It's just a short walk, she reassured me. What could go wrong? Our neighbourhood shop was a mere 2-minute stroll away, conveniently open 24/7 for when we forgot something during our big weekly grocery haul. Before, I could zip there and back in no time, but now, forced to come up with a reason why I couldn't, I stumbled. Seriously? I scoffed. One misstep and I'll be in so much pain. Then take it slow, she advised. But what if I trip? You'll be all right, she soothed. I might start panicking, I continued, running out of excuses. I really don't think this is a good idea. Just take your phone, call if you need me, she suggested, closing the fridge with a soft click. I can be there in no time. Susie had an answer for everything, tackling my fears with a patience I hadn't expected. The sun began peeking through the clouds outside. Fine, I conceded hesitantly, dragging myself upright. I'll be back soon. It had been ages since I last ventured beyond our doorstep for anything more than a cautious shuffle to the car. Walking towards the store, I felt exposed and uneasy. My pace quickened involuntarily with every step. The change in my pocket sounded like a dismal bell with each stride, an eerie soundtrack to my adventure. Despite living here for years, everything looked foreign to me now. I imagined eyes peering at me through windows, though no one was in sight. As an elderly woman passed by with her wheeled trolley, I shied away, terrified of any contact that might jolt my back into torment. She commented on the nice weather as she went by, and all I could do was nod, fighting to keep my breathing steady and ward off an impending panic attack. Feeling more and more unsteady and lightheaded, I was determined not to let this setback defeat me. So I stayed leaning against the wall as she walked by, pausing for a brief moment to gather my wits. Then, with the sound of a trolley bag fading into the distance, I looked towards the end of the street, readying myself to continue. Being so close, just a short distance from my doorstep, there was no way I could give up and return without achieving my goal. I did it, were the first words. Susie heard as I shut the front door. She stood at the top of the stairs, caught sight of me holding up a milk carton in triumph, and signalled for quiet. I'm with a client right now, she informed me. But that's great, Brandon. Good job. We exchanged a meaningful look, and I sensed that if she wasn't busy with her client, Susie would have rushed down to celebrate with me. It was a significant accomplishment, one that seemed out of reach for so long. I had ventured out to the corner shop, phone in hand, in case I needed to urgently call my wife. The shopkeeper welcomed me as if I were returning from a long journey, lifting my spirits as I grabbed the milk, paid, and started back home. The journey back was tough, and I had to pause several times either to steady myself or let others by. I was on alert for any sudden bout of nerve pain, a familiar foe that could incapacitate me with the smallest movement. It was only when I was safely inside, confronting Susie, that I really let out a sigh of relief. Despite my own doubts, Susie had faith in me. At that moment, she seemed to understand me better than any doctor could. Don't you want your cup of tea? I inquired. It's probably cold by now, she replied before heading back to her work. But it didn't go to waste. Chapter 12. Buster will take care of me. Susie didn't have to work hard to get me to go back to the store the next day, or the one after. My first trip for milk left me buzzing so much that I began to crave the feeling of pushing myself and achieving something. It was always a struggle, and more than once I found myself dealing with sudden, sharp pains while out. But rather than spiral into panic, I resisted the urge to call her. I told myself it would soon be over and focused on controlling my breath through the pain. With each outing, no matter how daunting, I was set on completing a simple task. By accepting pain instead of fearing it, my universe grew from just my home to include a few nearby streets. It wasn't a huge change, but it gave my days structure. Rather than watching the clock for my next painkiller, I'd think up a list of non-urgent errands like getting a new dish brush or more stamps and make my way to the store. In my head, this was my way of contributing to the household. It might have been small, but I was eager to support my wife and feel productive. Venturing outside also reconnected me with neighbours and regulars at the store. I'd greet them, sometimes stop for a talk. Just using my voice outside of my internal monologue was a breath of fresh air. I'm not one to unload my woes when people ask how I'm doing. Setting my problems aside really lifted my mood. These short walks also highlighted how out of shape I was. Considering I used to enjoy 60-mile bike rides, this was a rude awakening. I had to accept that biking like that might be behind me, but it bugged me to be winded just reaching the end of our street. Yet, what I loved, I found, was simply being outside. After being stuck indoors for so long, just feeling the wind on my face felt incredible. It was hard to stay down about myself when stepping into the sunlight. Even the rain felt refreshing after being inside so much. So, my daily trip to the corner shop wasn't a miraculous fix, but it did more for me than any medication. Slowly, things I once thought were beyond me started feeling achievable. If I could handle a short walk, maybe I could also head out to mail some letters or cross the street to visit a neighbour I hadn't caught up with in a long time. It pushed me to think past the next dose of meds, something I hadn't done in a while, and consider what I could do with my life. Riding a bike was out of my reach, just like the idea of returning to my old job was off the table. I was still dealing with a lot. Tackled before. It seemed manageable, and I knew I could rest once I got to the doctor's office. Susie had kindly offered a ride back if the walk turned out to be too overwhelming. The streets were unusually peaceful, with only a few cars parked along the curbsides and a cat leisurely grooming itself in the middle of the street. It struck me that most people were probably at their jobs, a reminder of the world I was trying to reconnect with. This led me to think, yet again, about my own career prospects. As I made my way, admiring the scenic hills outlining the town, the idea of guiding bus tours around the lakes crossed my mind. The area attracted tourists year-round, and I enjoyed both interacting with visitors and sharing my knowledge of the local history. However, the thought of not being able to take a break if I needed one held me back. Still, it was refreshing to be thinking about the future rather than being caught up in my own head. What I really wished for, as I continued my walk, was a sort of protector. That's when I encountered Buster. At first, I was too deep in thought to notice the dog watching me. It wasn't until I heard a soft whimper that I stopped and looked back. "Hey there," I greeted, stepping back to get a better view. The dog eagerly pushed its muzzle through the fence to say hello. "What's your name, huh?" The friendly Labrador looked up at me with warm brown eyes. I was tempted to kneel and meet him eye to eye, but hesitated, unsure if my back could handle it. Yet staying away from a dog so eager to meet seemed nearly impossible. Gently, holding onto a handrail for support, I eased myself down so that my knee gently touched the ground. The dog seized this opportunity to try and lick my face. "Take it easy," I chuckled, dodging a slobbery tongue. "Let's see who you are." I managed to grasp the dog's tag between my fingers, thanks to the spacing of the rails. "Buster," I read aloud. "Nice to meet you. The name's Brandon." Hearing myself talk reminded me how much I enjoyed conversing with David. Throughout the day, I'd interpret his actions and moods, providing commentary for my own entertainment. This habit started in my childhood with our dog, Leonard, when I was a restless kid searching for companionship. After the accident, that familiar longing for connection resurfaced. Meeting a new dog unexpectedly, I laughed internally at how naturally I reverted to this behavior. Buster, a fine-looking dog, seemed around 3 years old and remarkably calm. For a Labrador, his restraint was odd. Most would be overjoyed with a bit of affection. Instead, he kept his eyes on me through the rails, waiting for my next move, and I found myself unable to look away. "Guess I should be going," I finally said, peering at the house. Buster had free roam of the yard and settled on a mat by the doorstep, still watching me intently. I contemplated knocking to commend the friendly Labrador, but decided against it. While I might be a bit of a loner these days, I wasn't completely out of touch. Plus, there was no guarantee anyone was home. "Catch you later," I said to my newfound companion, walking away with a vivid sense that he was keeping an eye on me. The doctor was thrilled with my recovery efforts. I was making strides in lowering my meds to bearable levels without clouding my mind, praised for my physical activities and desire to return to work, though advised to moderate my ambitions. I had no questions for my GP. My thoughts were on seeing Buster again. Heading home, I reminded myself there's no rush. My body couldn't handle hasty moves, and one wrong step could derail months of progress. It was just a yard dog, I thought, yet the connection we made lingered with me. Indeed, Buster had made an impression. It was a golden Labrador, a kind that stirred up old memories, but this one was so easygoing. Living in a perpetual state of anxiety had become my norm, yet here was a dog seemingly with the attitude, "Why worry, just relax." With that thought, I yearned to gaze into his eyes again and uncover his hidden tales. Walking down the street, I was caught between excitement and feeling foolish. It was just a dog, I reminded myself as I neared the fence enclosing the yard. Would he even remember me from before, I wondered. At the final moment, buzzing with anticipation, I nearly decided to cross to the other sidewalk. Since the accident, my days were filled with negative thoughts or a sense of numbness, making this anticipation feel almost alien. But I resisted the urge to walk away, instead calming my breaths and coming up to the fence. "Hey, Buster!" I called out, looking through the fence. I glanced left then right, eventually stepping back for a broader view. Realizing the Labrador was out of sight, I quickly suppressed any arising disappointment. The sounds of life came from within the house, maybe a TV or people talking. Without Buster in the yard, I had no choice but to continue my walk home. Though I had only a few blocks left, at that moment, it seemed like an eternity. Chapter 13. Man's Best Friend. "Sorry," I mentioned to Susie later that same day, pausing for a bit to gather myself again. "Just a second." I had been in the middle of updating her on the details of my recent doctor's visit when suddenly my voice tightened. At the same time, my eyes began to well up with tears, which I quickly blinked away before they could escape. "Take your time," she offered me a reassuring smile. "So you ran into a dog." Ever since that incident, it felt like my ability to control my emotions had diminished significantly. All my life, I had kept my emotions tightly secured. Being raised in less than joyful households made me believe everything should be tightly controlled. It seemed I thought showing any bit of emotion would be my downfall. Whether it was the constant battle with ongoing pain that broke through my defenses, or years of isolation from everyone, now talking to my wife about a golden Labrador I bumped into almost had me in tears. "I'm being silly," I said, allowing myself a small laugh as I brushed away the tears. "It's just this dog I stumbled across during my walk. His name is Buster." "Why not visit him again?" Susie offered. "I bet his owners wouldn't mind if you just wanted to drop by to greet him." "Perhaps," I replied, feeling back to my normal self now, and couldn't help but smile at the idea that popped into my head. "Susie, do you think I should try becoming a dog walker for a living?" Looking at me from across the kitchen table, my wife was patient. I was actually making light of the situation, having been skimming through job ads in the newspaper when she had joined me after her day at work. "Pursue whatever brings you joy," she encouraged, pausing briefly, "even if it sometimes leads to tears." The job listings didn't really have anything fitting for me. Mostly I browsed them for a laugh or to share the more outlandish ones with Susie. While becoming a mover or a firefighter was out of the question, I found myself drawn to classes offered by the local community college. The notion of re-educating myself hadn't crossed my mind until that moment, but in the days that followed it dawned on me that this was my shot. Having to reclaim both my physical and emotional health, along with my independence, I had meanwhile lost my professional path. What lay before me was a chance for a new beginning. To truly seize this new chapter, maybe I needed to arm myself with new capabilities. The next morning, as I made my way to the store, I opted for a detour through the street where I had encountered Buster. I kept my expectations in check about whether I would see him. Additionally, with work prospects on my mind, I welcomed the extra distance as time well spent pondering. Discovering the college class ads had indeed sharpened my focus. I found myself eager about what lay ahead and happy to indulge in the stroll. As I edged closer to the familiar street, my church's spire stuck out above the treetops from our viewpoint. "You can take him there if you like." I glanced back at Buster's owner, needing to confirm what I'd heard. "Really?" I questioned, then cleared my throat. "I mean, I'd love to. That's probably the furthest I'd manage, to be honest." "Then Buster will take good care of you," she responded brightly, before asking me to hold on for a moment. While she went to get his leash from inside, I found myself staring at Buster. I kept reminding myself he was just a dog, but it somehow felt like an honor. Buster seemed to sense he was about to go for a walk. He pivoted towards the house door, his tail wagging. "That's very kind of you," I said as she came back, with the dog eagerly circling her. "You're doing me a favor," she replied with a smile, then attached his leash and opened the gate. Without any hesitation, Buster stepped out and sniffed my shoes. I took the leash, thanked her once more, and then said farewell before she could see the tears welling up in my eyes. The emotional pull of a dog was no shock to me, but I was conscious of how strange it might seem to someone who didn't know me. So off I went with Buster, marveling at what had just transpired. I hadn't anticipated anything beyond another quick greeting through the fence. Yet here we were, walking side by side on the sidewalk. More than that, he didn't tug or lag. He just walked next to me, as if we were embarking on some big adventure together. "Don't get too excited, Buster," I told him as we neared the crossroads leading to the church's entrance. "I'm not the fastest walker around." By the time we entered the church grounds, I was feeling worn out. The journey from Buster's house had been a gentle incline all the way, even though it was only 100 meters or so behind us. I turned to I looked back, realizing I had wandered further than I meant to, and felt the beginnings of a panic attack creeping in. Without thinking, I reached out to the church wall for support. That was when Buster looked at me. "It's okay," I found myself saying, thinking maybe he sensed my unease. I didn't want to worry him, not that he seemed worried. Actually, it felt as if I had just articulated Buster's thoughts. "Everything is fine," I reassured myself, and felt the anxiety loosen its hold. I took a deep breath just to double-check, and then carried on walking up the path with him. It was incredibly serene up here. A gardener was busy with the roses outside the church, but as we moved to the other side, the only sounds were Buster and my footsteps. A squirrel caught our scent and quickly climbed a tree. Buster took notice but stayed by me. "Should I let you off the leash?" I wondered aloud. I hadn't asked his owner, but in the brief time we'd been together, I felt I understood this little golden lab. Buster had stuck by me not out of anxiety, but through a comforting presence that had been clear all the way. I had a feeling that if I let him go, he wouldn't stray. "Let's go find a place to sit," I decided, and as I headed towards a bench with a view of the town, the lake, and the hills beyond, Buster matched my pace. He appeared to relish this moment of tranquility as much as I did. Gently, with my hand on the back of the bench for balance, I sat down. Buster jumped up beside me, sitting and panting contently, leaning against me. Looking over at my new buddy, I thought he could use a bath and a thorough brushing, but beneath that was a wonderful companion. This was as far as I could go today, which wasn't far, but Buster seemed perfectly happy. He wasn't restless or anxious about being with a stranger. Observing the world from the enclosure of his yard, I mused if he was enjoying the same feeling of liberation as I was. If anyone got my current mood, it was this little guy. He snuggled a bit closer, and I leaned into him, enjoying the connection. There was no need to hurry back, I realized. We had only been out for a little while. Spending just a few minutes here wasn't going to cut it. Returning Buster home now and pretending he had a good long walk wasn't an option. With that thought, I made myself comfortable on the bench, letting the sunlight warm my face. It was incredibly calm and quiet up here. Having Buster by my side made me feel truly liberated for the first time in what felt like forever. It was in that quiet moment, as I sat lost in thought, that everything seemed a bit brighter. I pondered over what direction my life should take, a question that had been on my mind for quite a while, when suddenly the answer just clicked. My gaze roamed over the scene before me, from a rusting gate across the roofs to the untouched land beyond. "Do you see that?" I asked Buster, pointing to the grand mountains embracing a lake's edge. "That's Cluny. It's one of my special spots. I'd bike there. It's just been a while since I've felt up to exploring." I paused, my eyes shifting back to the gate. Observing the locked padlock and the encroaching ivy, it was clear it hadn't been opened for a long time. Yet, in that moment, feeling I had reached my limit but eager to push beyond it, I saw a glimpse of my future. The career that sparked in my mind was new to me, but it felt right. I've always been curious about how things work, taking them apart and then putting them back together. Since Susie got me out of the house, I realized that even if life seemed to close in, no door was permanently locked. I looked back at Buster, who was still gazing at the horizon. It solidified my resolve. One day we'll walk there. We'll make it a reality. How does that sound? My voice caught his attention. Buster looked back at me, his brown eyes shining, silently encouraging me to believe in our shared dream. "Looks like we understand each other," I chuckled to myself, then reached out to shake his paw. "Deal, buddy." Chach. Chapter 14. A New Window of Opportunity. A builder? I was sure Susie would be taken aback by the job idea I had just thought of. Her eyebrows soared upwards as she looked at me from across our dinner table that evening. Yet she didn't outright reject the idea. "I could take a class," I suggested, pulling up the information I had found on my phone. "Once I'm certified, I can kick off my own mobile service. I'd be in charge, Susie. It means I can pick my whores, which allows me downtime if needed. Plus, it'll give you some space." This last point had popped into my head while I was walking back from the graveyard with Buster. Regardless of how Susie felt, I believed this would clinch it for her. Susie paused to drink from her water glass, eyeing me thoughtfully as she took a sip. "When does it start?" she inquired. A few days passed before I visited Booster again. His owner had welcomed me to take him out once more. Although I yearned to be at his gate at dawn, I figured it was only courteous to wait. Susie playfully questioned if Buster and I were going for a walk or on a date, drawing a laugh from me. To be honest, that Labrador had lifted my spirits. Returning from that hilltop bench, viewing the fells, had made me feel, despite everything, that I still had worth. It felt like life had sped on without me since my accident, but spending time with a friendly dog reminded me that I could still catch up. At its core, Buster brought back a sense of tranquility. After being adrift for so long, it was an extraordinary sensation. I was profoundly thankful to him and simply wanted to repay the favor. If that meant including him in my walks as I regained my strength and confidence, then we would be aiding each other. "What's our destination today?" I proposed to my new canine companion as we embarked on our second outing. I aimed to venture beyond the churchyard this time, recalling from my time with David, my previous Labrador, that this breed craved lots of activity. Having once driven through fields to expend some of David's boundless energy before his training as a hunting dog, I was aware that Buster might require more than a brief stroll up the hill. Watching Buster, I anticipated he would show the same excitement and eagerness I had seen in David, possibly spinning in joy or pulling on his leash to move faster than I could keep up. Yet he paced beside me calmly, nose to the earth, tail wagging happily. It was evident to me he was every bit as spirited and lively as any Labrador I had known. You could tell he was pumped, hopping from one scent on the ground to the next. But even with every chance to go full-on Labrador, he seemed more focused on my comfort than his own adventures. "So I'm kicking off a joinery course soon?" I shared with him as we took a shortcut through the churchyard towards the lane. "Would be cool to unlock some new paths, huh?" Buster threw a look back at me, his way of engaging in our chat. No other dog breed seems to lock eyes quite like they do. I lived with ongoing discomfort. The time spent outdoors and with Buster made it seem less consuming. He was my companion and confidant, not to mention my motivator for thinking about how to sneak him back home for a bath after his adventures in unsavory scents. This train of thought was abruptly paused in the classroom as the instructor called for our attention. Barely 5 minutes into the joinery course, I was completely captivated. My initial anxiety vanished as the instructor laid out the basics. When he distributed some balsa wood and tools, I was eager to dive in. I hadn't even waited for him to explain how to assemble it before I had done. My enthusiasm didn't wane. I spent lunch breaks and free time absorbing as much as I could, eager for the day I would be fully certified. I began to gather the necessary equipment and then made a significant investment by buying a van. This was an important financial step for us and pushed me to ensure the success of the business. I was both thrilled and apprehensive, yet committed to moving forward with my plans. Having Susie's unwavering support was a huge relief, and her happiness when I received my certification was palpable. Buster, too, was kept up to date on all developments during our walks. "I'm planning to distribute some flyers," I announced the day I got my certification. "Would you like to help me hand them out? We could cover a few streets a day and measure the response." This wasn't just a strategy for launching the business, but also a way to spend more time with Buster. I charted a course through the town, which would take us a week to complete and introduced us to new walking paths. Occasionally, as I was distributing flyers, residents would strike up conversations about my services, often diverting their attention to Buster by my side. Many would bend down to pet him or remark on his gentle nature. Soon I stopped insisting he was just a borrowed dog and accepted their compliments on his uniqueness. After delivering the final flyer, I was both worn out and exhilarated. "I couldn't have done this without you," I told Buster as we headed to his house, and I truly meant it. The physical demand of the task, stooping to reach every mailbox, had taken a toll on my back, triggering sharp pains and spasms. But I knew it wasn't life-threatening. I had to stay relaxed through the worst of it, focusing on Buster to avoid tensing up, which somehow made me feel a bit stronger each time. After leaving Buster, I returned home, optimistic about having laid a solid foundation for my career. "Now everyone knows who to call," I told Susie, placing my mobile on the table with a sense of ceremony. "The moment someone has a building issue, that phone will start ringing." "You're sure you put the right number on the flyer?" she teasingly inquired, glancing at the silent phone. "Very funny," I responded, waiting for her to go upstairs before pulling out a flyer from my pocket to double-check. The following day, with my phone still. Quiet, I started to worry. Had I overlooked something crucial? No other mobile window fitters were servicing our area, according to my research. I was sure someone around here could use my help. That's what I kept telling myself. I caught myself wandering back and forth between the kitchen and the living room, silently urging the phone to come to life. Gradually, a wave of nervousness washed over me. It seemed as though the walls were closing in, suffocating the air from the room. That's when I figured stepping out for a breath of fresh air might just do the trick. Making sure my phone wasn't on mute, I slipped it into my pocket and headed out, hoping for a change of scenery. What's our next move? I pondered aloud, seated on our familiar bench in the churchyard. Buster, cozying up next to me enough for me to feel the heat from his body, took in the scenery. Maybe we press on with handing out flyers, though I can't shake off the feeling that this might have been a misstep. Buster just gave his mouth a lick, seemingly unfazed by our predicament. I pulled out my phone, heaved a sigh, and glanced between the clutter of rooftops to the lake and slopes of dense forest ahead. Perhaps I've hit my limit here, I mumbled to myself. We just sat there for a moment, soaking up the breathtaking view. Feeling down seemed almost impossible against such a backdrop. Nevertheless, I knew lounging here wouldn't solve anything. Eventually, I'd need to take Buster back and confront the reality of our situation. Buster seemed perfectly content, shifting to snuggle with his head in my lap, a gesture of comfort in unsure times. Despite our short acquaintance, losing him was unimaginable. With newfound resolve, courtesy of his quiet support, I knew it was time to descend from our hilltop solace and tackle our dilemma head-on. Susie will understand, I assured myself, considering she knew my intentions were pure in signing up for that course, aiming to pave a new path for the future. Maybe the competition had been tougher than expected, with other builders dominating the market from afar. Selling the van might be our best move, I concluded, as we left the cemetery's tranquility. Sure, it would mean taking a hit financially, but the journey had been illuminating. It affirmed my capacity to navigate through life's uncertainties, with Buster by my side as my steadfast companion. Joinery might not be in the cards, I announced as we neared his street, but I guarantee we're in for more adventures together. Our bond had deepened to the point where he'd look up each time he heard my voice, a connection I cherished deeply, bolstering my confidence that together we could weather any storm. Then, out of nowhere, my phone broke the silence with its ring, catching me off guard as I fumbled to locate it. "Hello?" I spoke, not recognizing the caller ID. Yes, this is a good time." I looked over at Buster and then broke into a wide smile. "That's correct, the builder. What can I do for you?" Chapter 15. A New Job. A New Man. Within a month of accepting my initial job, I was swamped with enough work to confirm I had chosen the right path. Each job seemed to naturally lead to the next, and I was committed to performing each task to the best of my ability. Working as a window installer, I loved the variety each new job brought, different clients, different challenges. It was a welcome change from the monotony of a desk job, and my business quickly gained a reputation across Cumbria, increasing the frequency of my outcalls. Driving around in my van felt like freedom. It was my portable office, a little world separate from everything else. After an accident that had made me anxious about other drivers, I preferred less busy, more scenic routes. Instead of rushing down main roads, I'd find myself meandering through the countryside, with stunning views of lakes, forests, and valleys. Occasionally, I'd stop, pour myself a cup of tea, and just savor the landscape. Leaving behind a stressful career in sales, this new vocation was a breath of fresh air. Back pain didn't hinder me. I simply adjusted my schedule to prioritize my health. This life was beyond anything I had imagined, but I cherished it. I was doing work that fulfilled me and spending more quality time with Susie. We began to regularly enjoy weekday lunches together at a cafe with views of the lake and surrounding hills, breaking up our routine in a new, enjoyable way. Central to everything, just weeks after I started as a carpenter, was a golden lab named Buster. One day, having parked my van and walked up to greet Buster, I proposed to his owner. I was thinking, could I bring him with me to work tomorrow? Since our introduction, I had become somewhat familiar with Buster's owner and knew she had a hectic schedule and appreciated the break when I took him for walks. However, I was uncertain about how she'd feel about him being away all day. "That's quite the proposal," she remarked, eyeing Buster as he offered me a tennis ball from the yard's corner. At that moment, I was gripped with a sudden worry, a feeling that often hit me when I neared the house, anxious in case he wasn't there. If Buster had shown me what it felt like to blend in and fly under the radar, without him, I might lose that touch. Right there, as his owner hesitated, it felt like a small dream I held close was about to shatter. "If it's a hassle, I get it," I managed, maintaining a hopeful tone. I thought he might enjoy a ride in the van. Buster's owner turned her gaze towards me. Just then, Buster rolled the ball toward me, as if suggesting a quick round of catch. She then smiled warmly. "Are labs known to be work dogs?" "Mine certainly is," I replied, sharing in her amusement. Though I doubt Buster's skills include handling tools. I figured he'd make great company while I'm out and about. "How about it, Buster?" she proposed. "Think you could keep an eye on the van while Brandon takes care of business?" Buster nudged the ball closer, reminding us of the simple joys. I could even throw in an official. Was truly better with him around. Buster played a big role in making our routine feel complete. As time went by, the distance of our walks around job sites started to extend. I remained cautious, aiming not to strain my back, setting goals for a slightly farther ridge or gate than we had explored before. Buster, of course, relished the extended outdoor adventures, and seeing him so alive and joyful was a highlight for me. As a Labrador, he seemed to radiate pure happiness. I especially noticed his love for sticks. The moment he jumped out of the van, he'd start searching under trees for the perfect stick to carry, even if it was essentially just a large piece of branch, and he'd proudly carry it throughout our walk. No matter the size of the stick, Buster would walk with an air of pride, his head up high. Our path often led us through narrow passages not quite wide enough for his chosen treasure, but Buster always managed. Balancing the stick like a circus performer, he'd skillfully maneuver through tight spots and over narrow bridges. It was amusing to watch, yet his dedication was also touching and showed truly how devoted he could be. This devotion wasn't just limited to his sticks. The bond he had with me was of equal measure. Once out and about, it felt like we were more partners in crime than anything else, depending on each other. Moreover, as I established myself as a joiner in the area, Buster became a key part of my business's identity. One day, after delivering a set of keys to a regular client, a letting agent, for a newly installed window, I asked her how she was. After a brief reply, her attention drifted to Buster waiting in the van. "And how's Buster?" she inquired. This became a common theme with everyone I met. They were all more interested in how Buster was doing. And frankly, I was happy to let him steal the limelight. Buster had a way of brightening even the gloomiest Monday morning, lifting my spirits along with everyone else's. It got to the point where people would request my services not just for my skills, but also to spend time with Buster. Leaving my previous career in agricultural sales behind, I quickly realized that having Buster by my side gave my business a unique charm. I became known as the window fitter with the dog, and having my four-legged security chief with me seemed to attract more customers. None of us were complaining. More work meant more adventures on the road and more walks for Buster and me. In the countryside, being together was the best part. Yet even among those great moments, there was one time every day that filled me with dread. "We're back, buddy. Safe at home. See you tomorrow, okay?" Just seeing the way he moved as I closed the gate told me Buster felt just like I did. It was awful. I hated leaving him, and his eyes seemed to ask if I was ever coming back. All I could do was sound cheerful, especially if his owner showed up. It didn't seem right to reveal how close we had become, but walking away always left me feeling down. Susie noticed this after one shift. "You're a different when you're with Buster," she pointed out. "That dog really brings out something special in you." "In a way he does," I agreed. "I wish you could join us, see it for yourself." Susie waved that idea away. "No way I'm getting in that van," she laughed. "It's full of dog hair." We both smiled. I promised to clean the van. "It's where I'm happiest," I tried to explain, then remembered a photo of Buster I had taken earlier. I pulled out my phone and showed her. There he was, enjoying the ride, paw on the window edge like he was born for the road. "Isn't that cool?" "It's a wonderful shot," she complimented. "You've got a knack for capturing him. Maybe you should post some on your website." "But Susie, people expect to see joinery pictures there, not a golden lab." Yet she was already scrolling through my website, which even I had to admit was a bit boring, her expression showing clear disappointment. "A few pictures of Buster might make it more interesting," she suggested, handing my phone back. "I'd even hit like on those." I've always enjoyed photography. I'm not a professional, but I do take my time to set up a good shot. At weddings, I'm the one making sure everyone is visible in the group photo. My pictures might not end up in an art show, but I always do my best. And then Buster came along, making me constantly want to capture his dignified, expressive face on my camera. My aim was to capture pure joy, a mission made simpler given we dwell in one of the nation's most picturesque areas. On our walks, breathtaking views of wooded slopes or craggy rocks were common, with Buster shining as an effortlessly photogenic companion. He obeyed commands to sit or stand, but the best shots were those taken when he was least expecting it. Catching him in the act of shaking his fur with his face sharp and his jowls in full throttle always brought a smile to my face, though I debated their fit for my website. Gradually, I shifted towards posting shots of Buster either inside or next to the van, narrating a day in the life of my chief security officer with each post. Teaming up this morning, I'd annotate a photo of Buster surveying the road ahead from the dashboard. Each post would gather positive reactions and comments praising my single staff member. This encouraged more themed posts, like Buster by the van showing off our company logo, which attracted even more attention. Soon, I found myself relaxing the strict content guidelines of my window-fitting feed, sharing moments like sharing an ice cream with my chief of security. While these didn't directly relate to my work, they drew people to my page and sometimes even led to inquiries about my services. It became clear that using Buster not just as a prop, but as a subject of interest could boost my business. Hence, I moved from staged product-focused shoots to capturing Buster in his natural state amidst the scenic hillsides. This wasn't just business, it was a shared joy between Buster and me. Through this blend of work and play, we fostered growth in my business without it ever feeling like a burdensome task.